is Luke sad over the destruction of the Jedi Academy. Those are all assumptions. We don't know if that's the case. We know that Luke was started a Jedi Academy, and we know that Ben Solo was a student and turned against Luke. That's all that we know. I mean, now I can't remember. Maybe you can email me, or I'll look it up. Talkshownerd@gmail.com. Talkshownerd@gmail.com. I don't think Han says that Kylo wiped out the Academy. Luke started a Jedi Academy. One of his students turned on him. He may have mentioned that. Okay, but be that as it may, we don't know that the scene in the rain was Kylo taking out the Academy, nor do we know that Luke, with his hand on R2-D2 in front of the fire, has anything to do with the Jedi Academy. Now, follow me on this, and I'll get back to what happened during the movie. And we are going to get to a couple other things. There's actually an interesting news item as it relates to Mark Hamill and bogus memorabilia. I do want to talk a little bit about Rogue One and watching Godzilla, since Gareth Edwards directed Godzilla, and talk a little bit about what I've observed in watching that. So we do have other items to get to, but here's a couple of what-ifs for you. And then I'll get back to my theories on Luke and Rey. What if, in that Force back, Luke and R2-D2, and Luke with his hand on R2-D2 in the fire, what if he was burying his wife, Rey's mom? Right? What if something else happened? And that Force back was actually Luke in mourning over the funeral of his dead wife and Rey's dead mom. Pablo Hidalgo, who is a member of the Story Group, and you can follow him on Twitter. Disney has a Story Group, for those that don't know. It's a group of people, and they're in charge of all the canon as it relates to all of the comic books, and movies. And okay, so when you're writing a script for a Star Wars movie, or you're directing a Star Wars cartoon, or you're writing a Star Wars book, or making a comic book, everything right now that's being produced is part of the canon, so it all has to be connected. And so there's a Story Group that is basically guarding over all of this. Pablo Hidalgo has come out and said that scene in the rain that Rey sees in the Force back of Kylo Ren happens a lot closer to Episode 7 than we believe, which would kind of make sense, because for that to be the Knights of Ren and Kylo Ren taking out Luke's Jedi Academy, he would have been, because I believe it is canon that happened about 10 years prior to, or maybe it's not, but be that as it may. If that were the Knights of Ren taking out Luke's Academy, and that means that Ben Solo turns, becomes Kylo Ren, leaves, gets the whole outfit, and then comes back and is about as tall as he is now based off of when he went and was training with Luke at a young age. It just doesn't line up. So my point is, and I'll get back to Rey in a moment and the relevancy of that comment, is that Force back scene, we may not know what in the heck's going on. The only thing that we really know for sure is that Rey saw a vision of the fight that took place on Cloud City, because that was the hallway. We know that she was actually supposed to be seeing, and they shot it. There was, in the Force back, there was supposed to be a shot of Luke versus Darth Vader from Rey's perspective from a distance. So the hallway that pops up during the Force back scene with the lights before it collapses and she falls, she was supposed to turn and actually see Vader and Luke fighting. Now, here's an interesting sidebar to that. That scene more than likely was cut pretty late in the process, because on Force Friday, when the toys came out, everybody was scratching their heads because there was a Darth Vader, but more specifically, there was a Luke Bespin Cloud City action figure from Empire Strikes Back that was released with the Force Awakens toys. And that didn't make any sense. Okay, it's like, why did you guys put out a Luke Skywalker in his Cloud City clothes, the tan outfit, and it actually said, Cloud City or Bespin Luke or Cloud City Luke with the Force Awakens toys. Well, now it makes sense. because there was supposed to be a scene in the Force back between Vader and Luke, so it would have been referencing that. Now, another part to that too, and this is merchandise-wise, the Star Wars The Force Awakens toys did differentiate, to a certain extent, which toys were actually going to be in the movie and which ones weren't. Some of the new toys just had Star Wars on them, and some of them actually said Star Wars The Force Awakens, implying that as they said The Force Awakens on them, they were actually going to be in the movie. But even that didn't end up happening because the Snowspeeder chase there was a toy for that. There was a toy for Poe Dameron on a speeder bike on Jakku, and they took that out, and that was part of the Force Awakens toys. And there was also a speeder. There was a speeder for some of the scavengers on Jakku that came with a Finn a character. And there is a quick shot of that speeder flying by in the background, and there is a quick shot of the snow speeder, the First Order snow speeder, but those scenes were cut from the film themselves. Okay, so all of this comes full circle again to say, unless Rey's mind was wiped, which people are saying too, she could have had her memory erased. She did not know the Jedi were real. Now, granted, she was 5 years old when she was dropped off on Jakku, according to what we've been told, so she could have forgotten. But, I mean, realistically, if she's being trained and she's 5 years old, she's being trained as a Jedi by Luke, how does she not know that? So when I saw that in the movie, it really put me down this path of, I don't think that Rey was ever being trained at Luke's Jedi Academy. I don't think that was ever part of the deal. I think she was dropped off for a completely different reason. We've all just jumped to the conclusion because it makes sense that she was being trained, and that we're looking for a reason for why she was dropped off on Jakku. And people have made the assumption that it makes sense that she would be dropped off if she was a part of the academy and Kylo took everybody out. Okay, so this got me thinking down a path of Rey once again being Han and Leia's kid. So while I'm watching the movie, I'm thinking to myself, the only way that Rey could be Han and Leia's other child, their daughter, is obviously if Han didn't know. So what if they have Kylo gets a little bit older, Leia sends Kylo off to be trained by Luke. Leia tells Han in the movie that when she sent Kylo off to be trained by Luke, that's when she lost Han too. So you could speculate that she sends Kylo to be trained by Luke. For whatever reason, Rey and Han Solo and Leia have a falling out. Han leaves, but Princess Leia, now General Leia, is actually pregnant with Rey. And before she has a chance to tell Han, that's when we find out that Snoke has been influencing Kylo and seducing him all along. He falls to the dark side. So Leia decides that without consulting Han, she is going to go have Rey, and then once she's old enough, she's going to put her on Jakku because she's too afraid of what would happen if Snoke found out that there was another Skywalker. Makes sense if you're looking at parallels of the original trilogy, even the prequel trilogy and the new one, right? They split up the twins because they didn't want the Emperor or Vader to know that they had kids. Got it? Okay. Here's the problem, and why I ended up throwing this out, which means I just wasted your time, but still it's interesting. Towards the end of the movie, when Leia meets up with Finn for the first time, and Leia says, Han told me about the girl. We need to know everything about Starkiller Base. Leia doesn't seem to have she has no care in the world what happens to Rey. None. Which, two things. One, she wants to blow up Starkiller Base, but she has no concern whatsoever that the Rey is going to be blown up with him. Now, the only thing that could potentially be it is that Leia's had a sort of she's seen the future and know that Rey turns out fine, but that's deep speculation. Nor does it seem like she knows that she's a Skywalker. Okay, so based off of those scenes and Leia's lack of interest of what happens to Rey seems to just be a girl. Of course, Han doesn't seem interested in finding out who Rey is either or saving her. Finn's the only one. So it seems pretty clear that there's no way that Leia and Han know who Rey is. Now, you get to the end of the movie, and Rey shows up at the Resistance base for the first time, and Leia comes walking up to him. Rey's assuming that's Princess Leia. Okay? Princess Leia had only been told about Rey through Finn, didn't seem to care. And yet, when Rey shows up on the base, she's drawn to her, and R2-D2 wakes up. I think Leia immediately senses that Rey is Force sensitive and probably Luke's daughter. There was no time when they had a conversation about what she did on Starkiller Base. And I guess we can assume from when she arrived at the Resistance base to when she leaves that Leia and Rey have a conversation about the Force. But right before Rey leaves, Leia tells Rey, "May the Force be with you." And why in the world, if Leia's been searching for Luke Skywalker this whole time, and this is the whole point of the movie, why would she send Rey off to go to Luke? Unless she picked up on something and knows what the truth is. Which brings me back full circle. She's got to be Luke's kid, right? I'm about 90% sure that she's Luke's kid. I don't see how you get around that any other way. We as fans are all assuming that we're going to get some big surprise Luke, I am your father moment, because that's what we got in the original trilogy, and we're assuming we're going to get that in the sequel trilogy. There's nothing that says that we have to get a reveal like that. There's nothing that says we don't open up episode 8 to find out that Luke is Rey's dad. We're just assuming we're going to get some kind of twist. But remember, we didn't get a twist in the prequel trilogy. And as a matter of fact, it would almost be better for Rian Johnson and then moving forward to Colin Trevorrow to not go down that road, just because we did set everything up and go forward in The Force Awakens. Why retread old ground with some sort of big reveal? That's not to say that there isn't ties there, because there are relationships, and when we find out who Rey's parents really are, it's not going to be, shocking or interesting. It is just to say, assuming that we're going to get a Luke, no, I am your father moment, it's just an assumption based off of the fact that we got it before. And going back and watching the end of the movie again yesterday, it seems like Luke has two oh my gosh moments. He has the first moment when he lowers his head, looks at Rey, knows who she is. In the book, it says he recognizes that face. And he's like, oh shoot. Oh, crap. She's here now. I tried to protect her, and now she's here. And then it's like double when she pulls the lightsaber out. Like, almost as if Luke is thinking, okay, well, she's here. Who knows what this means, right? And then she pulls the lightsaber out, and he goes, oh, all right. Like, game on, right? Now we know that we're in it. So I still go 90% she's Luke's daughter. Just got to find out the backstory. 65% she's also a Kenobi. I still really like the idea that Kenobi had a daughter at some point that we haven't heard about, and that daughter ends up hooking up with Luke, and it's Kenobi's daughter and Luke that end up bringing Rey into the world. And I like that because you solve two problems. One, you obviously carry on the Skywalker lineage, because I don't think there's any redemption for Kylo Ren. I'll talk about that in a moment. I don't think there's any redemption for Kylo Ren. So you solve the problem of making sure that you continue the Skywalker lineage throughout the saga movies. I think eventually they're going to have to move away from it, but these are the Skywalker stories. And two, you also keep Obi-Wan Kenobi alive too, because Obi-Wan Kenobi is way too important to all 6 of the original movies to just suddenly now be forgotten and at the last moment of having Kylo Ren named after him. That just seems like a completely wasted opportunity. The only problem with having her be Luke's daughter and also Kenobi's granddaughter is that it does make the universe small. And I've heard that comment before. But from many people. But at the same time, you really can't get around the fact that the Star Wars world is small. I mean, when you look at all